Good afternoon and welcome back, ladies, gents and Pikachus. Another Without Lies, Islam Dies, the Quran of Allah. But we're going to go into some fine detail today. We've read the whole thing, we've gone through the boring verses, we've done some news, we've covered some people, some different countries' culture. But I feel like we're all adults. It's time to tackle the really nasty, nitty-gritty stuff, because a lot of people out there still don't really understand why Islam's a problem. And why it's a problem for them, or you in this case. So let's go through it. I made a little list. It's going to be quite a short and sweet video today. I want to go through Islamic Brainwashing 101. So, what is Islamic Brainwashing? Islamic Brainwashing is a system whereby the Muslim can convince you that they're not a threat at all, so that you turn your back, and while your back's turned, they can do whatever they like. Now you might think, this is ridiculous, why would anyone do that? And you'd be right, why would any normal, decent person like you do that? No one in this country does that. No one in any of these civilized countries you have visited will do that. In fact, you probably never meet anyone who isn't a Muslim who will do that. But it's a thing that happens. And one of the ways they get away with it is by pleading ignorance, which we'll go through. So let's get started. The first thing you need to remember about Islam when they're doing their brainwashing is Islam has a long history of fighting wars against people who didn't really want any of that smoke. They were just happily existing in their own country or town, doing their own religion or whatever. And then Muslims turned up. And the Muslims turned up and said, convert or we'll kill you. And when they didn't want to convert, they started killing people. And at first they had a measure of success with this. But soon enough the world started to wise up to what they were doing. Someone's drilling outside. Anyway, the world started to wise up to this, and then progress started to be made in militarizing the defense of different countries, and religions started to have their own armies in response to this Islamic aggression. And that was when Islam stopped working, so it dive bombed. And at that point, Islam realized hard power is not the way to go. Nobody's going to accept Islam willingly. And now that all these religions and countries have their own technological militaries, they can't just go in with a sword and expect to win. They'll get wiped out. And that's what we see throughout history. Every single time Muslims start a war on another country, they end up getting conclusively beaten. Every time they start a war with another religion, they get beaten, as we see at the moment. So what they did is they learnt from the communists to stop using hard power, and they started using soft power. Now, what is soft power, you might think? If you know about communism, you've already heard of it, but I'm going to assume you don't know what soft power is, and I'm going to tell you about it. So, what is soft power? If hard power is kings, prime ministers, generals, people with real physical power, elected leaders and their armies, that's hard power. Hard power is if someone doesn't want to do what they're told, you can make them do what they're told. Now in the West, that means you have law behind you, because we don't generally have pirate governments, we don't have terrorist governments, it's not a thing. So if you have hard power in the West, it means you are on the side of the law, and generally the people have elected you with a mandate to give you that authority. And if you mess it up, you will be unelected and someone else will take your place. So that's hard power. That's what we do here. Soft power is just a level behind hard power. So a king has servants, and his servants, he needs them to be loyal or his authority doesn't work. A general needs reliable stewards, captains and lieutenants, and if they don't do the work properly, or if they lie about the work they're doing, then that general ceases to be effective. Right? So soft power is the opposite of hard power. Soft power is a way of convincing people to not respect the authority of their leaders, to not fear the generals. So it defeats hard power. And it's a very effective strategy, which is why communists have been using it quite successfully in some areas, and why Muslims have picked it up. Oh, thank God, the drilling stopped. So, kings and their servants. That's what we've got to think about with Muslims. When Muslims turned up here, they were very polite, they were very unassuming, they didn't complain about an awful lot, and they were willing to just get on with life. And we thought, great, Muslims are lovely, they just want to live here like anyone else, they're not any trouble, they don't cause any crimes, and they're quite happy to live by our laws. Right, so we got in more of them. And then Labour got elected and thought, these guys are voting for us, let's get millions of them, millions of them, millions of them. And as soon as millions of them turned up, that soft power started to become a hard power of its own. Because now the bloc Muslim vote is like millions of people. So they go to the mosque and their imam says, you will all vote for this person and we'll defeat the white men. Then they all vote for that guy and they defeat the white man. And the guy they're voting for is a Muslim. So we got Muslim MPs, we got a Muslim mayor. They were talking about a Muslim prime minister, but thank God it didn't happen. That's soft power. Nobody saw it coming because they were unassuming and polite at first, and they convinced us to turn our back, and they gave us things to argue about that weren't true, propagandas and such. So we were over there arguing with each other, picking fights with each other. They're all in a team. And the reason they're all in a team is because they are slaves of Allah. The Quran tells them to do this. Their imams tell them to do this. And even though it's against the law here, if they don't do it, other Muslims will come and find them and apply Sharia, which is violence against them. And that's why in Islam, Muslims are all slaves of Allah. That's how it's prescribed in the Quran. They're not called followers or worshippers or volunteers or employees. There's no benefit to them doing it. There's a massive punishment to them not doing it. Right? So Allah has slaves, not worshippers. And every single person who calls themselves a Muslim, whether they believe in Allah or not, is a slave of his because they have to follow the Quran. And the reason they have to follow the Quran is because if they don't, guess what happens to their family? If they rebel, the family gets punished. If the family rebel, the children get punished. And the children are too young to know about rebellion, and they already fear this. So, slaves is what we're working with here. And as I said, a king needs his servants, and a general needs reliable stewards. So if the Muslims are slaves, and now they're here working for us, we think they're our postmen, our lawyers, our shop assistants, our drivers, our taxis. But they are slaves of a guy who wants to kill us and take over our country. So who do you think they're actually going to be loyal to when it comes down to brass tacks? When we're fighting each other, they are going to support their master, which is not us. It's not our leaders. It's not our prime minister. It's not the police. It's the imam. And the reason is because even if their family aren't here, Sharia means if you commit a crime against Islam here, that law gets applied to you here. They don't follow our laws, they follow their law, and they bring it here, which is why the book which I've done videos on, which covers their Islamic law, is called Reliance of the Traveller. Now, going back to the theme of soft power, why do you think a law code would be called Reliance of the Traveller unless it was specifically designed to be exported to other countries and used there? Right, so that's your first clue. Muslims that come here, even though they claim that they're going to be loyal and law-abiding, and polite and courteous and British, they are not following our law. They're following the Reliance of the Traveller, which is a kind of rewritten version of the Quran. It's like bullet points of Quran wisdom and Sharia, which is their law, and it's specifically designed to be hidden, right? And they even have a subset of that rules in the book, Reliance of the Traveller. Again, I've done a video on it, which you can see. One of the rules in Reliance of the Traveller is called lying. Now, the first thing it says is the worst thing a Muslim can ever do is tell a lie. Allah hates liars. If you're a liar, you're the worst person ever. You will burn in hell. You're evil. Muslims aren't allowed to lie. So if you just read that bit and then you just toddled off on your merry way, you think, great, Muslims are really honest. And that's the reason why that point comes first. But then you read point 2 and it says, unless Allah requires you to lie, then you are obligated to lie. And in which case you will go to the next subset of rules called permissible lying. So these are things which are lies, but because they are permissible in Sharia or in the Quran, you're not allowed to call them a lie if you're a Muslim, which means you're lying to the Westerners and you are telling them it's the truth. And for you it is the truth if you're a Muslim, because guess what happens to you if you don't do that, you don't stick to that? Off with your head, you're dead. And if they can't get you, family, wives, children, family back at home in the other country. So it's a military invasion, which is why it's called Reliance of the Traveller, right? So that's the first thing to note, is soft power is the way these guys like to work. And they're not doing it for a reward as such. They're doing it to evade punishment levied upon them by other Muslims who have more power than they do, more money, more authority in the community, more mates, bigger houses and cars. And they will lie to cover it up because it's a permissible lie. They don't consider it to be a lie. And what they do consider to be a lie is democracy, Britain, non-violent agreements, discussions with truth, scrutiny of the religion, and our culture. At a very base level, they see that as a lie, which is an evil placed upon the world by Allah in order to give them a righteous enemy to vanquish. This is in the Quran. This is also in the Reliance of the Traveller. But the bit in the Quran says, Allah creates the bounty of the world, east and west, as a gift only for his faithful Muslims. So that means the people who follow the Quran, in the words of Allah, in their law code and their Quran, own the whole world. All the stuff that you're wearing now, your house and your car, your children and your wife, Allah says that stuff doesn't belong to you. That stuff belongs to him, and he gives it only to faithful Muslims. Alright? So you approach your friendly local Muslim, who you're a good friend with, who's always been nice as pie to you, and you say, is this true? Guess what he's going to do? He is going to tell you a permissible lie. Because if he doesn't, off the head you're dead, and family gets punished, even the ones living in Pakistan. And he's not going to take that risk for you. You're just a kufir. You're just a, worthless non-Muslim. You don't know anything. This is how you're described in the Quran. You are deaf, dumb, and blind, sinful and evil. You have no soul. You're an unrighteous, filthy creature. Or if you're a Jew, you're a filthy ape. And if you're a Christian, you're an unintelligent rebel shepherd. That's how they're describing us, right? So I am both. I am both a filthy ape because I have Jewish ethnicity, and I'm also a rebel shepherd because I'm, religiously a Christian. So I'm like one of the worst people for them. But when it comes down to it, if you're not a Muslim from an Arab country, you are as bad as me to them. Allah has put you in his preordained plan. That means he's pre-cooked the plan. There's no free will in this plan. According to Muslims, everything's pre-written in the stars by Allah, and it's all going to happen that way, whether you like it or not. And the reason he's pre-written it is as a test of your loyalty to him. So if you don't do what he wants you to do, you'll still end up in the plan of Allah, doing what Allah wrote for you, but then it will just prove that Allah wrote you as a kufir, an evil non-believer. And you will die, and your family will be killed, and all your stuff will go to the mosque. like the same as me being a Christian and a Jew. So that's what you've got to keep in mind. Islam is a religion based on lies and deception, and really isn't a religion at all. It's a paramilitary politic with the goal of jihad. Jihad means resistance against evil, right? But evil to them means not a Muslim. The same way as when they say wisdom or truth, it doesn't mean wisdom or truth in a Western way. To them, truth means something said by Muhammad or by Allah. Wisdom means something that was taken out of the Quran. Therefore, everything outside of the Quran is not wisdom and is stupid, and everything not said by Muhammad is evil and bad, which is why they come here to do their jihad to wipe out evil and bad, us and our country, so that they can recover the bounty of East and West from Allah's great gift to them, and they can keep it and wipe us out. That's the only way they can get to paradise. So, that's soft power. Bit of a long-winded one there, but I think we've gone through enough for you to get the general idea of why we use hard power, because it's more honest, and it leads to a long-term future where everyone can live happily. If you follow the law, you'll never see that hard power. But if you commit a crime, the police will catch up with you, bang you in handcuffs, put you in a jail cell, drag you into court. Hard power. Soft power is how they get away with things. So soft power means you do a crime, you make sure there's no evidence, and you can produce a false witness. Because hard power requires witnesses. It's a fair system. If there's no evidence and no witnesses, guess what, buddy? There ain't no crimes. It doesn't matter whether you've been raped or beaten up or whatever. If you can't prove it in court, you ain't getting no justice. And that's unfortunately the drawback that they have noticed about hard power, is you can lie your way around hard power using soft power. So that's what they do. So Muslims have become experts in soft power, and now they are at war with us, like I went through, the jihad that the Quran describes against us evil non-believers, because we're wrecking the world, and the reason they've got poverty is us. We stole all their money that Allah freely gave them, created it for them. And it's preordained that we would be evil enemies of theirs that they will come and destroy. So that's the only reason that things aren't going their way. It's our fault, is how they see it. But they're using soft power to convince us to look the other way so they can stab us in the back. Because if they fought us fairly, they'd lose. They know that. It's been tried. It's failed many times in history. And that is why they went away from hard power and started doing the backstabbing and the soft power. So, why did they turn to soft power in the first place, apart from just constantly losing all their wars? Well, another thing you might notice is, in Muslim countries, there is a thing called an apostasy law. What that means is, whether you're a child, an adult, a man, a woman, or whoever, a visitor, a traveller, or you're from that country, if you are an apostate, this is punished with death immediately. If you can be proven to be an apostate, you are a dead man. So that means nobody wants to admit to being an apostate, which means someone who doesn't believe in Islam. So if you're asked in the street in a Muslim country, do you believe in Allah? You will have to say yes if you want to keep your head attached. Now, people say, oh yeah, but there's Catholics. There's loads of Catholic churches in the Arab countries, so that can't be true. Once again, we see the very intelligent application of soft power. Guess what Catholics have to say God's name is when they're in Arab countries? They have to say Allah. Even Christians do. Christians who only worship Jesus Christ, guess what they have to say when they pray? They have to say Allah. And I don't even think they're allowed to put their hands together. They have to do this. So the reason that happens is because even though they're not directly worshipping Allah when they say that, it's clearly a lie. Remember what I said about truth doesn't mean the same thing to them. Truth means whatever's in the Quran. So even though they're off worshipping Jesus, as long as what comes out of their mouth is Allah, which is what does come out because of the apostasy law and the death penalty, that means even though they're not Muslim, they're following the Quranic law. So there's no death penalty. They can just pay a jizya, which is a tribute tax. They can just give money or they can do favours. And then they're allowed to continually worship Allah. See, it's very, very insidious. And that's starting to happen here. We're starting to see now teachers being punished for talking about the Quran. Charlie Hebdo, remember Charlie Hebdo? Someone drew a cartoon of Mohammed and was immediately killed, and his workplace was exploded with bombs, and Paris was under lockdown for 2 weeks because they got attacked by Muslim terrorists. But what you weren't told is those Muslim terrorists were just everyday regular Muslims who got guns and got told by their imam, you have been called up for the jihad, and if you don't do it, that will mean you're a non-believer. And we know from the Quran, even if you're a Muslim, if you fail to be obedient to Allah, then that makes you a non-believer. And you're the worst type of non-believer because you used to be a Muslim, so there's no excuse of ignorance. You are immediately dead, and so's your family. So no one does that. They go for the jihad. That's why Charlie Hebdo happened, the Manchester bombings happened, and all the other terrorist attacks in this country all subsequently happened. Because of that Sharia. It's a slavery. Muslims are enslaved to it, which is why in the Quran they're described as slaves. Allah describes them as slaves. They describe each other as slaves, and they, I look at it like this, okay? We did away with slavery a long time ago. We sent armies abroad to various countries to wipe out slavery, and we were fairly successful. Certainly in this country, slavery is completely hidden if it happens at all, and it is very rare. And we pride ourselves on being this friendly liberal democracy. We got a nice friendly, we did have a nice friendly queen who was good. Now I'm in two minds about whether we got a nice friendly king. Kind of don't really like him. But we're getting off the point. The point is, soft power relies on the obedience of slaves to do the stuff that you need. The lying, the presenting the false testimony, the stealing, the setting people up, the pretending to be nice so that people get distracted and turn their back, and producing propagandas. That's soft power. Being a slave means you have no choice to not do it. Otherwise, and your family. Right? So that's the reason they'll do it. So in our country, freedom means you can do whatever you like as long as it doesn't harm anyone, and you'll be punished with hard power if you do harm anyone, if there's evidence. Soft power in Islam means you must do this or you will be punished, and there's no reward for you doing it. The reward is you're not going to be punished. But if you do it successfully, you will be part of a commune of other Muslims in the mosque, and you will get some of the wealth they accumulate shared out to you. You'll be given a better job. You'll be able to have a better car. The mosque will let you get away with these sins and crimes, and nobody will ever know. And that's also in the Quran. Allah says, and I quote, "The Muslim who covers up the sins of his brothers and preaches up the religion of Islam above all others is loved the most by Allah." Right, so think about that. Allah has a hierarchy of who he loves, and the order of who he loves is the most obedient man is at the top, and the most disobedient woman is right at the bottom. So love is no longer love. Now, love means duty. If you're a dutiful, obedient Muslim, you're loved the most. Whereas if you're a non-dutiful, disobedient, forced Muslim who doesn't really like it, you are for the chop because you're at the bottom. So it's not really love. Think about it. When you say you love your kids, if your kid does something horrible to you, steals off you, or breaks a window, or keeps getting thrown out of school, getting bad grades, is really rude to you, you don't demote the amount of love you give your kid, do you? Like if you've got a dog, you love your dog. If your dog craps on your carpet or, eats one of your pillows, you don't demote your dog for being disobedient. You still love your dog, right? And it's the same with God, Christian God. Christian God says he loves his children. If you're obedient or you're disobedient or you're really sinful, God still loves you. There's still a part of you he loves, no matter what you do. You still have to be punished because hard power if you do things wrong. But it will be a fair, just punishment that you will have entered into through your breaking of the law. Not disobedience, but because you actually harmed someone. It's not like you're The thing is, in Islam, disobedience means you didn't do what you were told, right? Which is a big distinction to, in the law, creating a victim. Being disobedient doesn't necessarily have a victim. You will be the victim if you're disobedient to Allah. Right? So that's that. But in hard power, under the Christian God, general Western secularism, the law that we have, if you create a victim, and that victim can demonstrate that you did that, because you created a victim, justice has to be applied to balance things out, because you made a victim, now you got to pay, or you got to do time in jail, or whatever it is. But if there's no victim, there's no crime. Right? So this is the difference between Islam and everyone else. Islam, you are the victim, and the way to not be a victim is to be obedient. Most other countries, certainly secularized, modern, lawful communities and countries, is you are not a victim, you are free. As long as you don't make someone else a victim, your freedom continues. But if you make another victim, you will be punished in relation to how you victimized that person. And that's why we have law, courts, policemen, and all the rest of it. But you're not a slave to it. There's no punishment for not doing anything. Like if the police say to you, you have to make this Facebook post, and you say, no, I don't want to, they can't force you to, because you're free. Whereas if the Imam says to a Muslim, you have to make this Facebook post, you are not free. You're a slave of Allah, and if you don't do it, off with your head, you're dead, and your family too. So you will do it. And the last point is, mostly about the Quran. We're still going into why did they turn from hard power to soft power. So the first point is they kept losing all their wars, and they realised we're better at hard power than they are, because our hard power is backed by morality, not obedience. Nobody was willing to accept Islam. Even little kids being brainwashed had questions, and you're not allowed to have questions, or Allah will say you're disobedient and you'll get punished. So they kept losing wars. Nobody was accepting Islam by choice, so they had to start forcing people. But they couldn't force them with violence, because it didn't work. We were better at violence than they were, because we were righteous and we had better armies, better kings, better generals, better laws. And people accepted those willingly, right? So the last thing is, Allah will punish you as a Muslim if you are disobedient. But since Allah is not real, he's not actually really here, the way that Muslims punish you if you're disobedient is by sending other Muslims to come and attack you and steal from you and break your things and threaten you. And then you can't go to the police because you're a Muslim. You don't believe in the police. You only believe in obedience to Allah. And you can't serve two masters. Even they know that. They copied that from Christianity. So, if you're a Muslim and other Muslims attack you, there's no point going to the police, because they will produce 10 false witnesses and they will get a very expensive lawyer to invalidate your evidence, so you have no chance. Thus, soft power defeating the hard power of law and order that we have. And that's why, as their numbers grow, we see more murders, we see more thefts, we see more money laundering, we see more rape gangs, we see more horrible perversions and crimes at the hands of Muslims, and MPs are not willing to stand against it. Because they know having evidence and a witness don't mean shit, because they've got 10 evidences and 10 witnesses who are all lying, but because they are in that little social commune and they will do that, it defeats a hard power. So that is why I say never trust a Muslim. Whether he's nice and friendly on the surface, he is a slave, and sooner or later his master, his imam, is going to set him against you, and he'll have to make the choice. Do I fuck over this Westerner, or do I allow my family to be violently killed and harmed? And you know which one he's going to choose, because you would choose the same thing. If you were involved in a horrible mafia-like death cult based on the Quran, you would choose that too, rather than condemn your family to a lifetime of rapes, beatings, and possibly murder. You would happily go and blow up a Westerner and call yourself a martyr in order that your family could be safeguarded, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you? Yeah, I know most people would. I wouldn't, because I don't know, I decided a long time ago I'd rather die than do anything Islamic. But most people would. Soft power. So that's how they do it, what it is, why they started doing it. Now let's get down to brass tacks. Like I say, this is the bit, even though we've been half an hour, this is the bit you really need to pay attention to. The rest of it doesn't matter unless you know these. These are the eyeball signs, right? These are the things you can look for to know when soft power is being applied. Because like I say, they cover it in deceit and lies. They will flannel you with how lovely they are and how great you are. You know, they know how to play you. They know how to make you feel good about yourself by massaging your fragile ego to tell you how beautiful and smart and wealthy and how much they love you and they love your country, so that you are distracted, you turn away. Soft power works in that way. So these are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 5 most obvious signs that a Muslim is using soft power against you. And I can attest to this. I have seen thousands of examples of this. Many people I trust and love and know really well, even though they're very intelligent, have been tricked in these ways and are currently having a terrible life without realizing that's the reason why. You know, and they fell out with me from trying to convince them because soft power, propaganda. So, where do Muslims use soft power? Where do we recognize it? The first place is anywhere where there's hard power. That's where we'll find it. So, if you see a police station and you see a police chief, under him is going to be Muslims working for him, and those Muslims are going to be doing his paperwork. They're going to be his eyes and ears, like in the military if you've got a general. His captains are his eyes and ears, like if you're the boss of a company, your managers are your eyes and ears. So the soft power is the next layer down from hard power, and hard power relies on that soft power. Right? So that's where you find it. That's why it's so effective. Then we go into the real detail. These are the 5 things that you can spot that are definitely going to be signs of Muslims using soft power on you. The first one is, well, they're all like emotional, right? Because it is like socialism. They don't use physical things unless they have to, because they know they'll get caught and lose, or there's a possibility it won't work. There's enough of them that they can manipulate you with emotions. Psychology. That's what they do. So the first one they use is very basic. Everyone understands it. Greed. The first half of greed is me, me, me. I want stuff. I like luxurious wealth and money and the accumulation of goods and services. I like to have 20 wives and 50 children. But I like to sit on my fat backside eating tacos all day. Halal tacos, of course. Because that's the life for me. That's what Muslims might well think. So, how do they get away with being that greedy, considering in the Quran they're told you're not allowed to accumulate wealth? Well, what they do is they accumulate wealth and they give it to the mosque, and then they do the jihad and the favours for the mosque, and the mosque will give some of it back to them. So the Muslims you see driving around in the posh Mercedes with the nice plush Gucci suit on with the £4,000 Rolex, that guy is working for the mosque, and the reason he's got all that stuff is because every time he goes to the mosque and reports on his Westerners that he's trying to fuck with, they give him access to that stuff and money. So his greed is satisfied. But how do you know that he's just not a very hard-working, successful guy? He might be, but probably not. And the reason you know that is because the other side, the other half of the greed impulse is he will use your love of greed against you. Right? So how does this work? Well, they need a target to take money off. They need someone who has a nice Mercedes, has a nice Rolex, someone whose company makes a lot of money, who they can get into. They need you so that they can get hold of your wealth, your valuables, your house, your car, your money. And even if you don't have those things, you will know someone who does. So what they do is network. They get to know you, and they're nice, friendly Muslim to you. Then they get to know your friends, and they get to know your friends' friends, and somewhere along the way they will locate a bank manager, a politician, someone who's incredibly wealthy, and that will be the target. So they'll filter that information back to the mosque, and they will arrange other Muslims to start hanging around with that person, or if it's you, it'll be you, and they will try to ingratiate into your life. They will move people near to where you live. This has happened to me. They've moved out now, thank God, but I did have this happening where I lived. And they will follow you around. It won't be difficult for them. It won't be like they have to go off the beaten track to follow you. They'll already have Muslims that work in the shop you go to, or that go to the library you visit, or that walk their dogs in the park you sit in. Those guys go to the same mosque, and they'll get shown a picture of you with some details by the original guy who is your nice, friendly Muslim. That's why you can't trust him. And he'll deny this with the permissible lies. all the other guys in the mosque will get shown a picture of you and they'll get told, you are an evil Westerner. You are one of these guys that Allah has set up so that you can rob them, if you're a Muslim. And it's totally fine. It's moral. It's good. It's just. It's truth. It's wisdom. It's good. And if you don't do it, off with your head. Punishments for your family. You will be poor and unloved. I.e. you'll be disobedient. I.e. you'll be an apostate. So they won't have any moral issue with this. And this is something a lot of Westerners have a real hard time accepting, because we like our morality. It makes us feel good and content with life. We feel like great people because it is great to be moral. It's the nearest thing you can get to being an angel of God. If you're a moral, honest person, and you can stick to those morals even when you're offered violence or poverty or even death. That's the measure of your character as a Westerner, but not with Muslims. That is something that makes you unrighteous, evil, and a kufir if you do that. Because you're being obedient to your own desires. You need to be obedient to Allah's desires. Right? Allah's desire is to recoup the bounty of East and West, his gift to Muslims, take it off white people, Christians, Jews, apostates, atheists, pagans, anyone else, and give it back to the mosque so that they can give it back to you. Allah the socialism. So that's greed. First thing you'll notice with Muslims, if you've got your eyes open and your head switched on, they're very greedy, but they cover this up with zakat, which means charity to the mosque. And how that looks is, they won't say, I want all your money, please give me all your money. They will say, please give money to the Gaza support charity. If you're a moral person, you'll give money to the poor old Gaza orphans, won't you? I'll collect it for you and I'll give it to my mosque and they'll make sure it goes back to Gaza. You think it ever goes back to Gaza? No, of course it doesn't. Israel and America give aid to Gaza. And plenty of Western charities give money to Gaza. The mosque charities don't give any of their money away. They spend it on enlarging their mosque in terms of membership, in terms of authority, soft power. Right, so that's greed. You will see this if, I know I'm giving you a lot of information here, friend, but this is going to be worth you really taking note of and learning. Go out into the community. Don't let on that you're doing this. Just keep your eyes open with your nice, friendly Muslims and the people they know. And you will notice everything in a Muslim's life comes down to money. Not for them. They don't want it. But the mosque wants it. And if they don't get it back to the mosque, guess what they are? Apostates, dead, family punished. Right, so greed. Watch out for it. In order that you don't detect their greed, right, I kind of enjoy how intelligent this is, even though it's evil. The thing they back up the greed with is indifference, right? So how does indifference work? I don't care. It makes no difference to me. That's indifference when someone says that. So when you say to them, why do you need all this money for Gaza? They will first play the emotional thing of going, oh, dead babies, horrible orphans, you need to give money to them. It's not for me. I'm indifferent. I don't need your money. That's when indifference comes in. As soon as they say, it's not for me, I don't care about my own life, that's indifference. So rather than saying, I'm greedy, I want your money to give to the mosque so I can be rewarded, which is the truth, we know from reading Reliance of the Traveller and the Quran and from surveying Muslims over a long space of time, they will go from greed to indifference, which means it's not for me. I'm just being a good, faithful Muslim. I'm just doing my job collecting zakat for the mosque, who distribute it totally fairly, which is a permissible lie. We know they don't do that because they're driving around in fancy Mercedes. So they use indifference to convince you they're just lovely, charitable people. They're definitely not taking the money from themselves, and they're definitely not giving it to the mosque for the purpose of terrorism, fighting the cause of Allah, the jihad, against you. No. We'd rather tell you permissible lie, use indifference, get you to turn your back. All right, you see how this is going? So that's indifference. And the reason they use indifference is twofold. The first one is they actually don't care about you. They care about the stuff that you have. They care about the connections and contacts you can make for them. And they care about taking off you everything that you do have. Not just money, wealth, cars, houses, girlfriends, children, jobs, positions in the community. It might even be something as simple as a path you walk in the morning with your dog. They want that path. They don't want you walking there. How can they trick you out of it and take it off you? Well, they use indifference, greed, soft power. So, If greed doesn't work, then indifference doesn't work. If 2 out of their 5 things don't work, they're nearly at 50% there, so they'll start thinking, this guy's on to me. And that's not a place you want to be, my friend. Let me tell you why. If greed doesn't work, if indifference doesn't work, the next tactic they're going to use is fear. Rah! Jumpy scares, right? That's where they're going to go. So fear is, they are leveraging your emotions. They're leveraging your free will to do what you want, to try and make you do what you don't want, or to not do what you want. That would be more accurate. So when greed doesn't work, indifference doesn't work, now they're going to introduce fear of loss to you, right? So they say, I want your stuff, but it's not for me, it's for the charity. It makes no difference to me whether you give it to me or not, but you're an immoral person if you don't, so they try and manipulate you that way. When that doesn't work, they will say, look, you're only going to have this chance now to do it, otherwise tomorrow I'm going to make my mind up about you that you're on the wrong side of history, you see? So they manipulate your emotions by saying, yesterday it was, oh, I don't care, it's not for me, it's for the charity. The next day it was, you have to make your mind up now, otherwise I'm going to make my mind up on you, and then I'm going to tell my little Muslim buddies, this guy's an Islamophobe. That's the way they get you with the fear, right? Fear of loss of reputation, loss of walking routes, loss of stuff, loss of friendship, loss of a good neighbour. You know, something they're giving you now, you thought you were getting for free. No, you're not getting that for free. They're going to use that to manipulate you with fear of loss, number 3. And it's very effective, as you can probably imagine. So we're getting to the last few now. Greed, indifference, fear of loss. The 4th one is tactics. Now we covered this a little bit when I was going through the whole lawfare, you know, the Reliance of the Traveller bit. Tactics is how they can leverage not you, but they can leverage your life against you. Because they know you. You're a law-abiding Westerner, a very predictable creature. This is how they describe you, as an animal. All right? A filthy ape, or a rabble shepherd, something like that, you know, like me. So, how they will leverage tactics against you, tactics means short-term plays, right? Strategy is a long-term play. So, the Quran provides them with a strategy of being a slave of Allah, doing the cause of the jihad, overthrowing Western governments through soft power. That's the strategy. Tactics is the play-by-play thing they're going to do. So let's say they steal something off you, or they tell a lie against you to manipulate you in some way, or they offer you with violence to force you to do something, and you want to go to the police. You're going to need evidence, you're going to need witnesses, and you're going to need courage to actually go and make that statement, wait for 9 months until it goes to court, and hope that they don't get to you in the meantime, which they will threaten to do. So, the tactics they are using is false witnesses, which they will be in ready supply by the mosque, doctoring with evidence or manipulating witnesses who were good to not show up or to lie. I've had this happen to me as well. And they will manipulate the courts. They will use lawfare. They will try and invalidate your evidence. Like with me, right? It's well known on my channel. A guy tried to kill me outside of my door for the fact that I am a Christian and a Jewish, you know, I'm ethnically Jewish. No other reason but that. Tried to kill me outside my door. Snuck up behind me in the nude after having commented he was going to do pervy, horrible things to me and then cut my head off and kill me or break my neck. Whacked me over the head with a metal bar, splitting my head down the middle. And then I kind of was getting strangled with something. Turned out to be the strap of my bag because he was behind me. But I managed to survive this and wrestle with the guy to get outside, and I finally pushed him off and had my hands up. At this time I'm very concussed because my head split open. I'm fighting for my life with this guy who's naked and presumably on crack because he was like mental. So I survive the attack, he leaves, I'm still there. I call the police immediately. I say to the police, take my statement now because I'll forget because I got a fairly nasty gash on the head. And they called an ambulance, and the ambulance gave me some stitches. I think I had 15 stitches to close the wound on my head. And I gave an accurate statement. When I got to court, his Muslim lawyer did what? Well, his Muslim lawyer successfully lobbied the court that my testimony be thrown out as unreliable because I had concussion. Isn't that a thing? So in his head, he can whack me over the head with a metal bar, provided that there's a witness to say that the metal bar was mine, which is also what happened. And then the only counter evidence when the witness has been tricked into his side is my testimony that the weapon was his. But my testimony is now unreliable because I have the concussion from the wound. So that means he is using a tactic of bending the court, bending the witness, bending the law in favour of him to victimise me further. And that's exactly what happened. So that's what you've got to watch out for. And it won't just be in a court of law, it will be at work, in a shop, it will be in every situation. And remember, the reason they're doing this is because hard power works. They're terrified of hard power, but it relies on servants, stewards, witnesses, that's who they're affecting with the soft power. So be on the lookout. Greed, indifference, fear of loss, tactics, which they'll use against you. And that brings me to the final one, socialism, which is where they got this playbook from. This wasn't originally the old Quran, as far as I could tell. I mean, there's very little evidence of it, but the original Quran writings were set fire to and completely destroyed by a guy called Uthman. Sometime after, I think it was like 500 AD, something like that, I think. Don't quote me on that. This Uthman guy collected up all the different Quran manuscripts because they're all different. None of them agreed with each other. And obviously, this was causing some problems with Muslims because they were killing each other to say my one's correct, your one's wrong. But if they're all written by Allah, surely they would all agree. So Uthman collected them all up, burnt them all, and formalised, right, this is my Quran, this is the one all Muslims should use. If you find anyone else using a different one, off with the head they're an apostate, torture their family. If you find any other Qurans that don't agree with my one, burn them. And that's how we got to the one we've got today. So that is where socialism crept in. I don't know whether they had it before that. I'm not sure they did. But the fact is, today they do. So, why are they using socialism? It's so that they can leverage your political naivety or someone else's political strength against you when all the other tactics failed. So they tried to buy you off or rob you and it didn't work. They tried to manipulate you with emotions. I don't care, it doesn't mean anything to do, but I'm going to make my mind up on you. You're going to be an Islamophobe. That didn't work. Then they started threatening you, saying they were going to follow you or beat you up or steal from you or they're going to get you fired. They're going to wreck your reputation. That didn't work. So the last thing they are going to do is get you into trouble with the last four that we went through. And then the socialism means they're going to ruin you in the eyes of the society, the hard power. So they're going to give you a criminal record you don't deserve. Then they're going to make it look like you say racist, nasty, homophobic things or, homophobe, transphobe, misogynist. All that stuff is coming from them. They're going to ruin you in that way. And that means when you try to go to your hard power sources, your police, your courts, your politicians, those people are going to support him against you. Despite the fact that he's been victimizing you, he's committed crimes against you, he openly has shown that he wants to show you violence and steal from you, no one's going to see that. Because permissible lies, like we went through. And they're going to use the tactics to make sure this is widely known. And your back was turned, so this all snuck up behind you. Like, I bet you didn't know any of this. You probably knew none of this until right now. This has been going on since the 1940s, when they first started coming here. Specifically since the end of the 1980s. Most prominently under Tony Blair's government. He's really the guy who put this into our laws, brought us into Europe to make it easier. And it's all been downhill from there. So, 48 minutes is long enough. Let's go through it. The 5 things where you will spot soft power on Muslims using this against you. Greed, indifference, fear, tactics, socialism. Please revise the video if you need to have the drawn out details on those. And I won't go through it again now, but you can remember it like this. GIFTS, gifts. These are Allah's gifts to the Muslim against you. The gifts are greed. They want your stuff and they're willing to lie to you in order to get it because the mosque needs it. It's not really for them, it's for the mosque, and the mosque will give it back to them. So it's called charity, zakat, because they gave it away, but then it came back to them. So they can say they did the charity. Remember, Islam is all about face, lies, deceit. Allah is the greatest of all deceivers, as it says in the Quran. Greed. Indifference. I don't care about you. I don't care about money. I'm doing this all for the mosque, all for charity, all for God, all for the Gazans, all for the poor orphans, all for the widows. That's what they will say. And then when you say, well, I don't really like the idea of that, I don't really trust that, I'll go, well, I'm not sure about you. I'm indifferent to you now. That leads into fear, which means they can leverage your free will, your emotional, you're able to be manipulated in that way by saying, right, greed didn't work, indifference didn't work, you must be an Islamophobe, I'm now going to ruin your reputation, I'm going to run away to my police and my politicians with my manufactured evidence and my bought-off paid Muslim witnesses. So it's a threat, fear of loss is yours. If that doesn't work, we get into the tactics. Right, now I'm going to really get my Muslim bros on side and we're going to group attack you to make sure you get a criminal record, your relationships are ruined, your reputation is ruined, your job and your wealth and your family are ruined, and even your freedom to walk around your own town and be safe in your own home. Those are the things they will take. And the final thing, when all of that fails, is socialism. We're going to make the government hate you. Tommy Robinson's a great example. If you need to know how Muslims will use greed, indifference, fear, tactics, and socialism against you in this pre-planned way to try and make you submit to Allah. That's what they're doing. They're trying to make you surrender your autonomy, your freedoms to Allah through the mosque so they can control you and get money for it. If you need any more detailed examples of how this works, Tommy Robinson is a perfect example. And that's how they get you. So, that, my dearest loves, is the end of this video. I really hope you've been picking up what I've been putting down here, because this is all 100% true stuff. If you don't believe me, buy it and read it yourself. The Quran of the Muslims! That's the main book that they use. The Reliance of the Traveller is their current law codes, and they will deny this with permissible lies, which you'll find in there. How we know it's true is by looking at their behaviour over the long term, ignoring what they say about what they do, and actually taking observations of what they do. That's how to judge a Muslim. Judge them by what they do, not by what they say. And you will have to make some effort to find out what they do, because they're very deceptive and they will hide it and lie to you. And they will produce false witnesses, people that will say, he's lovely, he would never do that. Of course he hasn't got 7 wives, he's only got 1 wife. You must be out of your mind. You must be an Islamophobe. Greed, indifference, fear. That's how they get you. And if you keep all that in mind and you revise all this, because it's like an hour long, there's a lot of information here, which is for your own good. If you don't know this, you're a sitting duck. Absolutely a sitting duck if you don't revise this, which I would hope that you do. But if you do, you will be leveled up to the kind of semi-expert level just from knowing that. And then, like I say, if you need to know more, or if you just don't believe me, you think it's so ridiculous, it can't possibly be true, which is the emotional manipulation they'll use. Oh no, he's got to be crazy, you know, he's just an Islamophobe to say that. If you don't believe me, Quran of the Muslims, read it yourself. Reliance of the Traveller, read it yourself. Be aware and observe. Don't make it obvious. And you will find out 100% of what I've said today, and in fact everything I've ever said on my channel about Muslims and Islam is 100% true. And the reason they do this is so they can defeat Christians, Jews, apostates, atheists, Buddhists, pagans, Hindus, everybody else, so that they can return the bounty of Allah, east and west, to the pockets of Muslims, which is the cause of Allah, the jihad. That's why they're doing it. And let's not let that happen, because this is our country. Your stuff is yours, my stuff is mine. We are free people living in a liberal democracy, and we should not want to give that up. And you can also, as a little added bonus before I end the video, think of Muslims like this. If their religion is so fantastic, so much better than here, if other Muslims are so righteous and moral and lovely, and there's no crime in their countries, and there's no problems in their countries, and it's so great over there, why do they all want to come here? If it isn't for an invasion to spread the religion, for the jihad so that they can have money off their mosque and not have their families targeted, then why would they leave? They wouldn't is the answer to that. So you know for a fact all of this stuff is true, and the reason they're here is to push it further because they are at war with everybody else who's not a Muslim from an Arab country. That's the end of this video. Although it's shocking, it's 100% true. Like I say, check it and read it for yourself. You will also know. Or look me up in the comments. You know, I've got all day. I will quite happily answer any of your questions, show you more evidence. I have 2,000 videos on my channel. The majority of those are going into the truth of Islam. How it's not the religion of peace, it's the religion of lies and death. And that's the message I hope you've picked up. But like I say, don't take my word for it. Find out for yourself. That's the end of this video. Hope you enjoyed that and you learnt something. God bless you all. Not from Allah, because he's false. It's not God. God is God. Allah is more closer to Satan. So God bless you all. And I'll see you lovely people in the next one. Bye now. So that's about it for today, but please, if you listen to nothing else in your life, listen to this. Find out for yourself, read those books yourself, because, like it or not, the jihad is happening, and it's happening here, now with you. So that's all for now. God bless you all, have a lovely day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.